Well, hello there, and welcome to another episode of Martifacts. Where I'm exploring this, just sharing the stories of the things that I surround myself with, adorn myself with, the things I keep, the things that matter, and the things that I'll leave behind as well. And needless to say, this is sort of a personal history journey. And it's made me slow down and look around and think about these things in a different way. Um, and realize, as I tell my guests, and I've spoken at my over 400 show and tales over the last almost 15 years, that these are our personal, these are our souvenirs of our life. It's not that the thing matters itself, even though that's what the name of my podcast is the stories that get attached to them. And I believe one of the first Martifacts that I shared a while ago. I've done a few. Was one, of course, was Flatsy the flat cat, who has now traveled over 140. We just turned 140,000 miles. So that's a fun story. And then I think I shared a story of a award my dad won just a couple of months after I was born in Okinawa. So 67 years ago. Um, but today I thought I would share a little bit about kind of like how I came to do what I do. Um, Not the show and tales section of it, the events, the story sharing gatherings that I started 15 years ago, but the original journey into entrepreneurship and social, what is it called? Social um, uh, entrepreneurship. Yeah, I guess that's what it is. In With my first business, or AKA, as my accountant would say, my first hobby, my first passion. So I will tell a little bit more about my funny travel through career and work and stuff like that more at another time. But basically, when I ended my work as a New York City public school teacher, a high school biology teacher in New York City, where I worked for 8.5 years and loved teaching, absolutely loved teaching. But I had promised myself that if I got burnt out, I would not stay in it. And I love my students. I love teaching. I love New York City. But the administration finally burnt me out. I wouldn't say I was burnt out totally. I was just a little crispy around the edges. And I knew burnout was coming. So, anyway, I was trying to figure out, well, what's next? And at that time, there was a bit of surge and probably federal and state support for entrepreneurship. And I got involved with an organization called WIBO, which stands for Workshop in Business Opportunity, which I think just celebrated, I think its 50th year. And it was unique in the fact that it was once a week for, was it 12 weeks? And you had a workbook, and there was one main person, but they brought in, speakers to speak to you and talk about, return on investment and, all the business stuff that, money never really motivated me. So that was a little hard, but it was a wonderful experience. And I had no idea what what I would go into. That's been my challenge. I don't know about you, but it's been my challenge. I've known what I didn't want to do, but knowing what I wanted to do, because it's hard to know when you're limited to what you're exposed to. And that's why I'm so grateful to the location indie community and the FIRE community, the financial independence and retire early community, and a bunch of other communities that I've been around, is that it really exposed you to different thoughts about what you could do, what's a possible career or a entrepreneurial adventure or journey. What could you do? And because we're like high school and we're at college and we have to pick this thing, and there's like limited um, career choices sometimes, or we're not exposed to a lot of them. So anyway, I was just like, I had no idea what I was going to do next, and but they were like, oh, just you know, be surround yourself, be curious about life and curious and ask people questions and just take some time. And thankfully, I had sign language interpreting, ASL interpreting, sign language interpreting that I could fall back on for a bit while I was figuring things out. And so I'm so grateful for that ability to bring in money while I was figuring out what the heck am I going to do next. And anyway, I was visiting a friend in South Carolina, North Carolina, in Asheville, North Carolina. I had not seen her in probably 6 years or so. And one of the things that she found, that we had a limited amount of time to visit, and I'm not really sure why, but she one of the things that had happened in that time since I'd seen her is she became an aunt. And it was so important to share her experience and her just delight in being an aunt, or an aunt, some people say. So she was just so delighted, but how she wanted to share the story with me is she wanted to find a certain photo. And so she ended up spending quite a bit of the time going back and forth to her bedroom, to her a dresser. I didn't know, I was in the living room, and find a packet. You know how we used to get photographs in those envelopes, and she would bring one at a time and look through, and she could not find the photo that she had meant to, that she was looking for, and that she wanted to show me, to then use it to share her story of loving the experience of becoming not. And so I started thinking, I wonder if there's other people who have this challenge. Like, do other people have a lot of photos and a lot of things? Because let's face it, yes, there's a lot of photos, but there's also objects. There's things, documents, letters, baby teeth, locks of hair. Um, we save lots of things. And these are, like I said, the souvenirs of our lives. We pick them up, we're gifted them, somebody dies, and we inherit them from them. Um, we travel, obviously, and get souvenirs near and far, right? Postcards, special letters, of course, books, right? These are all things that we surround ourselves with and adorn ourselves with. And when we look at them, we think about a time, an experience, because that's why they matter. They connect us to a memory of our past self, of where we want to go, perhaps. Um, our family, our friends, all of that. And I just thought, do other people have this problem, this challenge with saving all these things, collecting all of them, having them out around, like, but there's too much to have around us, so we put them in a box. And that's how my first business, Memories Out of the Box, got started. Hold on one second. So I ended up starting, oops, here it is. Here's the thing. My first business or hobby, like I said, passion project called Memories Out of the Box. And I had a store for a year and a half in Prospect Heights on Vanderbilt Avenue. And I think that, yes, this was my new one that didn't have the address because after a year and a half in retail, where everybody thought, what an amazing idea. But it's a challenge running a small business, an unusual business like mine, where I told people I would help them go through all their photos and documents and memorabilia and organize and select or curate them and then help them um, tell a visual story with these things. These obviously photos are a big part of it, but I would help them do all of that. And then I had products and frames and scrapbooks and digital frames, because those were supposed to be the solution, right? And then I had a workshop space where I would teach classes and teach people how to and encourage and support them in doing it. And then I had a do it with you service, sort of like one on one, like I will really support you. And in New York City, there wasn't a lot of room in somebody's home. And if they were doing something as a gift for somebody, where were they going to put this stuff? So I had people store their things in the space, offered that. So a do it yourself, a do it with you, and a do it for you service. Um, and what happened quickly is that idea of either you have the money or you have the time. Well, in New York City, that was definitely not true. If you had the time, you didn't really have the time to do things yourself because you were working hard to live in New York City. So you had a second job or a third job or some kind of other gig, or you were taking care of your kids while your other partner was going off to like you didn't really have the time. And so after about a year and a half of the retail store, and I realized I really didn't love retail, I ended up moving it into my apartment, moving it into a small bedroom, a small room in my apartment, and continuing the work of creating visual narratives from people's photo, document, and memorabilia archives. And keep in mind, lots of people, when I say this, because this is a new concept in a business, right? Like back 30 some odd years ago. So everybody was like, oh, you digitize. Oh, and I'm like, well, if you want things digitized, then yes, that's part of it. But I advise people, please don't just bring boxes and boxes and boxes and boxes of your family photos and your inherited photos to a place to get them digitized. Because realistically, what will happen then is you will have a disorganized physical collection of all of these photographs, and you'll have an equally disorganized collection of digital photographs. And that's not the solution. Sure, there's a little bit of protection, perhaps, maybe, but the real important thing is to organize and to edit and to edit and to edit and to edit, as we all know, right? We used to be limited with how many prints, right? But with the digital ones, that makes it even worse. And then, of course, they had oh, buy one set and we'll give you two set more that you were going to someday put in an envelope and mail to somebody, and they never that never happens. So now you have multiple copies of everything, and they're scattered everywhere. So a lot of people are like, oh, so you only work with people who have physical archives and boxes and things like that. And I would say this is a box, and it has many more photos in it, many more things in it. And a similar thing, just like my friend in North Carolina, who couldn't find that photo. So many of us do the same thing. We know it's in there somewhere, but if there was something comes to mind, somebody says something, or like, oh yeah, I remember that, and you start looking through, very often you can't find it either. So that was the creation. That was the start of my first business. My first passion project is helping people tell the stories of their life using their photos and their documents and their things that matter. And the end product could be anything. I suggested to my clients, it could be anything. It could be a wall of family frames, like up and down staircases, or in a hallway that you could use that. Or it could be obviously a private website that family and friends could go to. Or if you wanted to publish it, it could be that. But most people settled on a good old fashioned scrapbook, a one of a kind that had locks of hair and baby teeth and the bracelet from the baby that you brought home from the hospital and baby booties and letters and postcards and souvenirs and plane tickets and concert tickets and playbill programs and all the things that we save and or inherit. And everything but the kitchen sink, I said. And needless to say, there were a lot of one-offs that I did, but if people wanted multiple copies for other people, or if they were significant in the life or the history of an area and they wanted to donate a book to a library or museum, then once I curated everything and selected, obviously with some supervision from my clients, but mostly they didn't have the time or the attention, whatever. They mostly like just said, "You take it away." That once every I get approval, then I get things digitized, which, needless to say, is not inexpensive. And then I end up creating a book from it. So this was one of the books that I created for a client. That this was, I think, the third book I made for Ginny Glideman, and this is her husband Howard. And we needless to say, made multiple copies for the library and also for her family. Um, but we have, as you can see, some of the old photos from him around and the travels, and then we had his bar mitzvah, and needless to say, we had to get this was a Cupid doll, a graduation Cupid doll that we had to get photographed to go in here. Um, there was a mention of medals. Now, needless to say, I didn't do the writing of this. I am not a memoir writer, but she wrote the narrative here, and I just I we hired somebody to do some, just look at it and make sure it was written. But he was it's a lawyer, and he had tons of newspaper clippings about, fascinating things. Like, actually, at a time they would not expect a woman who was pregnant to go into court, and so the whole court had to go to this woman's house, and instead it was just a fascinating collection. We've got, of course, some of these things from their travels as well, all in here. So yes, so this is a thing that matters because it was a project with a wonderful woman that I had the pleasure of working with. And I never met her husband, but I learned a lot about him through this work, this book that matters. So there's a little history of the start of my entrepreneurial journey with memories out of the box. Thanks for listening. And think about the things that you surround yourself with and you adorn yourself with in your personal museum. And I'd love to hear more. Uh, Please reach out.